You should hire a maid. We are not nurses.
I never thought the day would come when my own daughter would stand in the doorway and look at me with something colder than indifference, contempt. For 40 years I had served strangers at Boston Memorial, guiding them through their darkest nights, holding trembling hands, keeping death at bay. And now, at 68, I found myself crawling on my bedroom floor, the hardwood cold against my palms, tears streaking down my face, the fresh wound in my knee screaming with every desperate shuffle. "Mom, what are you doing?" Melissa's voice cut through the air. Not worried. Not gentle. Annoyed. I stopped, panting, clutching the edge of the bed frame. I've been calling for 20 minutes, I whispered, my throat raw. "I need the bathroom. I need my medication." She glanced at her watch with a sigh heavy enough to crush me. "We can't hear you from downstairs. You know that? And Derek and I have dinner with the hospital board in an hour." Dinner? My heart clenched. No one had told me. When they'd agreed to care for me after my surgery, a surgery I had postponed for years to keep working, to keep giving, I thought it was family, not duty. "I'm sorry," I murmured automatically, the words falling from my lips as easily as breath. Even now, old and broken, I apologized for needing. Melissa stepped forward at last, hooking her arms beneath mine. Her movements were quick, efficient, but hollow, void of the tenderness I once taught her to show her patience. I saw the gleam of the expensive watch I'd bought her last Christmas, the sheen of the designer dress she wore, gifts and luxuries, made possible by my lifetime of saving and giving. By the time she lowered me back onto the bed, the door opened again. Derek filled the frame, immaculate in a tailored suit, smelling of cologne. "Everything all right in here?" he asked without meeting my eyes. "Mom needs her medication," Melissa said tightly. "Can you get it?" "I need to finish my makeup," he frowned. "Again? Didn't she just take it a few hours ago?" "It's time," Melissa snapped. I lay silent, listening as they debated my needs like I was not in the room at all. "I can try to reach it myself," I whispered, tilting toward the nightstand. "Number, I'll get it." Derek's tone was clipped, impatient. He thrust the pill bottle and water into my hands, but my fingers trembled. The childproof cap resisted, and in a blink the bottle slipped. White pills scattered across the floor like tiny pearls. "For God's sake," Derek exploded, his voice shaking the walls. His face turned red, jaw tight. "That's it. I've had enough." Melissa rushed back, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. "What happened?" "Your mother dropped her pills everywhere. I don't have time for this." Shame and panic twisted inside me. I bent forward, reaching for the scattered medication, but a bolt of agony ripped through my stitched knee. "Stop," Melissa snapped. "You'll tear your stitches. Then what? Back to the hospital?" "I'm sorry," I whispered again, tears spilling hot and unrelenting. And that was the moment. The moment their resentment finally cracked wide open. "Do you have any idea what we've given up this week?" Melissa's voice trembled with rage. "I rescheduled 3 surgeries. Derek missed 2 board meetings. We are not your servants, Mom." "No." Derek cut in, his voice sharp as steel. "We're definitely not your nurses." The words sliced into me like scalpels. "You spent your life caring for strangers." Melissa spat, her face twisted with something ugly. "Did you really think we would drop everything for you? Not everyone can be the legendary Nurse Simmons." And then, together like a sentence passed by 2 judges, came the words that ended whatever illusion of love I had left. "We're not your infirmers," they shouted. "We have our own lives." Silence followed. Silence so loud I could hear my own heartbeat. And in that silence, something inside me changed. My tears dried. My hands steadied. My late husband Thomas's voice echoed in my memory. "Annie, you can't buy love or respect, not even from your own family." I thought of the down payment I'd given them for this house. the tuition checks for Melissa's medical school, the countless loans that vanished without repayment. And suddenly, I saw it all with brutal clarity. They weren't caring for me. They were using me. A strange calm swept over me. I reached for my phone. "What are you doing?" Melissa asked, suspicion curling in her voice. "Making two very important calls," I said, steadier than I had sounded in years. "Go. Enjoy your dinner. Don't worry about me." They exchanged a look, confused, but relieved. Then they left. The door shut. The house grew still. And I knew, this was no longer their home. It was mine. And tonight, I was taking it back. The quiet pressed against me after they left, broken only by the faint hum of the air vent and the pounding in my chest. I wiped the last trace of tears from my cheeks and steadied my hands around the phone. For the first time in years, they didn't shake. I dialed the first number. "Boston First Bank, this is Mr. Peterson in accounts." A calm voice answered. "This is Ann Simmons?" I said, my tone sharper than I expected. "I need all joint accounts with Melissa and Derek Winters frozen immediately. Terminate their access to my personal accounts as well." There was a pause on the other end. "Mrs. Simmons, that is an unusual request. Are you absolutely sure?" "That can news Simmons." I drew a deep breath, every ounce of humiliation from the last week fueling me. "I've been banking with you for 30 years, Mr. Peterson." "Yes, I'm certain. And I want a full accounting of every withdrawal they've made over the past 5 years. Cancel all automatic transfers to their accounts. Effective tonight." The silence stretched, but then his voice softened with respect. "Understood, Mrs. Simmons. We'll begin processing this immediately. It should all be complete by morning." "Thank you," I said, my voice firm. "And one more thing, has the mortgage payment for 247 Beacon Street been made this month?" A beat of hesitation. "No, Mrs. Simmons. That's the third consecutive month it's been delinquent." My lips pressed into a thin line. So it was true. Not only had they treated me like a burden, but they weren't even paying for the house my money had secured. My name was still on the deed. "Noted," I replied coldly, and ended the call. The weight on my chest lifted, replaced by a fire I hadn't felt in years. I scrolled to the next number. James Harrington. My attorney of 20 years. My lifeline. "Ann," he answered immediately, warmth in his voice. "Is everything all right?" "No, James," I said, my voice steady, deliberate. "It isn't. I need eviction papers drawn up immediately. Melissa and Derek Winters have 48 hours to vacate the property at 247 Beacon Street." There was a stunned pause. "That's unusually harsh, even for you. Are you certain you don't want to give them more time?" I closed my eyes, seeing again their twisted faces, hearing their voices spitting my name like it was filth. "Ann, not Mom, they've had plenty of time. And plenty of my money. 48 hours, James. Tomorrow morning. I want those papers delivered to the house." He hesitated, then sighed. "If that's your wish, I'll make it happen. But Ann, brace yourself. This won't be easy. I've faced harder battles." I whispered. "This one's just overdue." "I have faced harder battles." When I ended the call, silence rushed back in. But it wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean. Clear. For the first time since surgery, I wasn't suffocating. I forced myself upright with the walker, dragging my aching leg toward the bathroom. The mirror greeted me with a stranger. Hair tangled, eyes swollen, shoulders slumped beneath invisible weight. Nurse Simmons, the woman who once commanded operating rooms, had become a shadow. I turned on the tap, splashing cold water across my face, and I swore to the woman in the mirror, never again. I would not spend another night under this roof. My thumb hovered over one more contact. Vivian Torres. 30 years of friendship. Former head of physical therapy at Boston Memorial. The only person who had ever dared to call me out on my blind devotion to Melissa. The phone rang once. Twice. Then, Annie? What's wrong? Her voice cracked something open in me. Viv, I hate to ask this, but I need help. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said without hesitation. And she was. When the doorbell chimed, the sound almost broke me. Vivian stepped inside, her sharp eyes softening when she saw me frail, pale, my walker trembling beneath my grip. My God, Anne. She breathed. What happened? Where are Melissa and Derek? At dinner. I answered bitterly. Vivian's jaw tightened. She didn't need details. She'd always seen through my excuses. The way I covered for Melissa's cruelty. You're coming home with me, she said firmly. I can't impose. Stop. Her hand cut the air like a scalpel. For once in your life, let someone take care of you without argument. And so I did. As she helped me gather medications and a few clothes, I told her everything, the sharp words, the financial betrayals, the mortgage unpaid, the calls I had just made. Instead of shock, Vivian's face filled with grim satisfaction. About damn time, she muttered. I've watched you give and give, while they took and took. Why didn't you say something sooner? Would you have listened? I asked quietly as we made our way down the stairs. Her gaze met mine, steady, unflinching. Number you wouldn't have. The truth burned. But it was truth. She settled me into her car, the leather seats soft against my aching body. As we pulled away, I stared at the house in the rearview mirror, the house my money had bought, the house they believed was theirs. It grew smaller and smaller, swallowed by the night. You know this won't be pretty when they find out, Vivian said softly, her eyes on the road. I nodded. I'm counting on it. At her condo, she led me into a guest room that was warmer, more comfortable, more mine than the cold space Melissa and Derek had shoved me into. For the first time since surgery, I allowed myself to cry, not the quiet, guilty tears of a burden, but the guttural sobs of a woman mourning 40 years of misplaced love. Vivian sat beside me, her hand steady on my shoulder. Get it all out, Annie. Tomorrow's a new kind of battle. And she was right. For 4 decades, I had fought for others' lives. Now, at 68, it was finally time to fight for my own. Morning light spilled through Vivian's curtains, softer than any dawn I'd seen in weeks. My body ached, my knee throbbed, but there was a strange peace inside me, like a wound already starting to scar. For the first time since the surgery, I woke without the weight of dread. Downstairs. Vivian was already making coffee. She looked at me as I entered, walker steady under my hands. Sleep? She asked, as well as someone waiting for war. I replied, my voice stronger than I expected. She placed a mug in front of me. Good. Because it starts today. By 9 o'clock, James Harrington's courier was at Beacon Street. In his hands, the eviction papers. Stamped. Signed. Legal. 48 hours to vacate. I wasn't there to see it, but I could picture it perfectly, the front door swinging open. Melissa in her silk robe, mascara smudged from the late night, her eyes narrowing at the man in a suit. Mrs. Winters? He asked politely, handing her the envelope. Her manicured nails tore it open, and in seconds, her face must have drained of color. What the hell is this? She shrieked, her voice carrying through the halls. Derek appeared behind her, tie loose around his neck. What now? Eviction papers. Melissa hissed, shoving the document into his chest. From my mother. I imagined the way his face tightened, the way his jaw clenched as he scanned the page. 48 hours? She can't do this. She did. Melissa spat, pacing, her bare feet slapping against the hardwood. She froze the accounts too. I just tried the card at the cafe. Declined. Everything. Gone. Their voices must have echoed through the house. The same house I had paid for. The same house where I crawled on the floor like a beggar. Meanwhile, I sat at Vivian's kitchen table, sipping coffee with hands that no longer trembled. By noon, my phone rang. Melissa's name lit up the screen. Vivian arched a brow. Ready? I pressed accept. How could you do this to us? Melissa's voice cracked like a whip, trembling with fury. Do you have any idea what you've done? Finally, I said softly, you sound like the patients I used to care for. Shocked, betrayed, vulnerable. Maybe now you'll understand. Mom, she started, but the words sounded hollow now, an echo without meaning. No, I cut in, my voice sharp as glass. Not Mom. Not today. You wanted to call me Anne? Fine. Then Anne is the one you'll deal with. And Anne is done paying for your life. There was silence on the other end, except for Melissa's shaky breath. You can't just throw us out. She finally snapped. Where will we go? What about the hospital dinner? Our reputation? I almost laughed, but it came out colder than that. Reputation doesn't pay mortgages. I did. And I'm done. Derek's voice cut in then, loud and seething. You've lost your damn mind, Anne. You think you can humiliate us like this? We've sacrificed for you. Sacrificed? I hissed, my hand gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles whitened. Do you call ignoring my cries sacrifice? Do you call standing over me while I crawl across your floor sacrifice? You abandoned me in my hour of need. And now, I'm abandoning you in yours. Silence. For a long, glorious moment, then Melissa's voice. Small, almost pleading. What do you want from us? What did I want? Respect, love, gratitude. All the things money could never buy. But those things were long gone. I want you out of my house, I said flatly. 48 hours. James will be watching. If you're not gone, the police will handle it. And then I ended the call. Vivian's eyes glistened as she watched me set the phone down. Annie, she whispered, I think you just performed your first surgery on yourself. Cut out the poison. I leaned back in the chair, the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. Then let's hope I survive the recovery. That night, as the city lights of Boston shimmered in the distance, I realized something profound. For decades, I'd been saving lives. But now, for the first time, I was saving my own. The knock came like a thunderclap against Vivian's front door, furious, relentless, shaking the frame. Vivian looked at me, her brow furrowed. They're here. I tightened my grip on the armrest of the chair. My knee still ached, but my spine felt straighter than it had in years. Let them in, I said quietly. Vivian opened the door. Melissa and Derek stormed inside, their faces twisted with rage. Melissa's eyes were bloodshot, her hair disheveled, her silk blouse creased from a sleepless night. Derek's jaw was locked, his fists clenched at his sides. How dare you? Melissa spat, her voice shrill, trembling. Do you know what you've done to us? The board is already whispering, our accounts are frozen. Our house is slipping through our fingers because of you. Our house? I said softly, the words like ice. You mean my house. My name is still on the deed. My money bought those walls you're screaming about. Derek took a step closer, his voice booming. You think this is justice? You're destroying your own family. People will hear about this. Do you want your colleagues to know that the great nurse Simmons turned on her own blood? I stood then, slowly, using the walker, but with a dignity that silenced even him. I turned on no one. You turned on me. You left me crawling on the floor, begging for help. You sneered while I begged for pills to dull the pain. You stripped away every shred of dignity I had left. Melissa's eyes filled with tears, but they burned, not softened. We have careers. We can't just throw our lives away because you decided to fall apart after surgery. Fall apart? My laugh was hollow, sharp. I postponed that surgery for years so you could finish school, so you could chase your careers without worrying about me. I gave you everything: money, security, time, love. And when I finally needed something back, you gave me contempt. Vivian stepped forward then. her eyes blazing. Enough. You don't get to stand in my home and scream at her. You lost that right when you chose your egos over her health. Melissa spun toward her. Stay out of this, Vivian. This is family business. Vivian didn't flinch. Family business? Don't make me laugh. Family doesn't leave their mother crawling in agony. Family doesn't drain her accounts and toss her scraps of attention like crumbs. Family doesn't look at the hands that fed them and call them a burden. Silence crashed into the room. Melissa's lip quivered, but she held her chin high. Derek's eyes flickered anger. Yes, but behind it, fear. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. You have until tomorrow night. 48 hours. Pack your things and leave my house. If you refuse, the law will remove you. I won't bend. Not this time, Melissa's voice cracked. You'd really throw your own daughter out into the street. I met her eyes. And for the first time, I didn't see my little girl. I saw a woman who had chosen pride over compassion, greed over love. No, Melissa, I said softly. You threw yourself out. I'm just opening the door. Her tears spilled then, streaks of fury and shame. Derek grabbed her arm. We're done here, he muttered, dragging her toward the door. Melissa turned back one last time, her voice breaking. You'll regret this, Mom. The word mom landed heavy. A weapon. A plea. Both at once. But I didn't flinch. I regret nothing but waiting this long. The door slammed. Silence fell again, thick and trembling. Vivian placed a hand on my shoulder, her eyes shining with pride. You did it, Annie. You finally did it. I exhaled, a long, shuddering breath, as if 40 years of weight were leaving my body at last. No, Viv. I whispered, staring at the door where my daughter had vanished. This is just the beginning. The slam of the door still echoed in my chest, long after their footsteps faded down the hall. For a moment, I stood frozen, leaning against my walker, listening to the silence that followed. It was not the heavy, suffocating silence of their house, the one that pressed me into apology and shame. This was different. This silence was clean. Free. Vivian placed a warm hand on my shoulder. You've cut them loose, she said gently. Now it's time to stitch yourself back together. The days that followed were not easy. My knee ached, the scar stiffened, and there were nights I wept into Vivian's spare pillow, grieving not only the loss of my daughter but the truth I had ignored for years. Yet beneath the grief, something began to grow. A steady pulse of strength. 2 mornings later, the courier returned with confirmation. Melissa and Derek had vacated the Beacon Street house. Their things, hastily packed, were gone. My lawyer sent me the deed papers, the bank confirmed my accounts were secure. For the first time in decades, my finances, my home, my future, they were mine alone. Vivian drove me there that afternoon. The house stood tall and quiet, sunlight spilling across its windows. My heart clenched as I stepped inside. It smelled of them still, Melissa's perfume, Derek's cologne, but beneath it, I felt something shift. Ownership. Room by room, I walked slowly with my cane, breathing it in. This was not their sanctuary anymore. This was the home I had earned with years of double shifts, with calloused hands, with sleepless nights at Boston Memorial. A home I had almost given away. Vivian caught me smiling faintly at the empty living room. What are you thinking? She asked. That it finally feels like mine. I whispered. We spent the rest of the day airing out the rooms, opening curtains, letting the Boston sunlight cleanse what resentment had poisoned. I filled the silence not with apologies, but with plans. I pictured the dining room table crowded not with people who took me for granted, but with friends, neighbors, colleagues I had loved and lost touch with. I pictured this house as a refuge not for Melissa and Derek, but for me, and maybe one day, for others who needed it. A place where no one was made to crawl. That night, as Vivian drove me back to her condo, she glanced over. What now, Annie? I looked out at the city lights, at the hospital that had been my second home, at the world that still pulsed with life. For the first time, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like a survivor. I've spent 40 years saving everyone else, I said quietly. Now, I'm going to save myself. Vivian smiled, her eyes glistening. And that, my dear, is the bravest thing you've ever done. I leaned back, closing my eyes. Tomorrow would bring gossip, confrontation, maybe even regret. But tonight I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace, and with it, a fierce, quiet promise. I would never apologize again for simply needing to live. Now, at 68, I was facing a different kind of fight. One for self-respect, for boundaries, for the recognition that generosity without reciprocity isn't kindness, it's self-destruction. As I drifted off to sleep in Vivian's guest room, my phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. Dinner running late. Don't wait up. I turned off my phone without responding. They'd discover soon enough that I wasn't waiting up. In fact, I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. The nurse, who had spent her life attending to others, was finally attending to herself. I woke to the sound of my phone ringing incessantly. The digital clock on Vivian's nightstand read 9:17 a.m. 23. Missed calls and 35 text messages, all from Melissa and Derek. Where are you? Mom? This isn't funny. Your walker is still here. But you're gone. Answer your phone. The latest message received just minutes ago was different. There's some man here with legal papers. What's going on? So, James had delivered the eviction notice. I could picture Melissa's face, the shock, the disbelief, the rapid calculation of what this meant for her carefully constructed life. Derek would be pacing, running his hands through his hair the way he did when hospital budgets didn't balance. My finger hovered over the call button, but Vivian gently took the phone from my hand. Breakfast first, she said firmly. You'll need your strength. She helped me to her dining room, where she'd prepared eggs, toast, and fresh fruit. I couldn't remember the last time someone had made me breakfast. At Melissa's, I'd been expected to fend for myself, despite barely being able to stand. They found the papers, I said, picking at my toast. Vivian nodded. Good. How do you feel? Terrified, relieved, guilty. I looked up at my friend. Is that strange to feel guilty about standing up for myself? For you? It's practically a reflex. Vivian's eyes were kind but unflinching. You've spent your life making sure everyone else's oxygen mask was secure before even thinking about your own. My phone rang again. Melissa's face appeared on the You should answer, Vivian said. But put it on speaker. I want to hear what that ungrateful daughter of yours has to say. I took a deep breath and pressed the green button. Hello, Melissa. Mom, where are you? Her voice was shrill, panicked. There's some lawyer here saying we have to leave our house in 48 hours. And the bank called, Derek saying our accounts are frozen. What's happening? I think you know exactly what's happening, I replied, my voice calmer than I felt. I've simply taken your words to heart. You're not my nurses, and I'm not your ATM. Is this because of what we said yesterday? We were stressed, Mom. You can't possibly. I can and I have. I cut her off, surprising myself with my firmness. The house payments you've been forgetting to make for the past 3 months, that stops now. The emergency funds you've been using for vacations and renovations, that stops, too. How did we were going to catch up on those payments? Derek's voice now. They had me on speaker, too. This is completely unreasonable. Is it? I asked. Tell me, Derek. Was it reasonable to leave your mother-in-law crawling on the floor for 20 minutes when she needed help? Was it reasonable to resent caring for me for 1 week when I paid for your wife's entire medical education? Silence on the other end? Then Melissa, her voice suddenly softer, calculating. Mom, you're upset, and you have every right to be. We've been under a lot of pressure lately with work, but that's no excuse. Come home and we'll talk about this like adults. I am home, I replied, just not at your house. Where are you? The panic was creeping back into her voice with someone who actually cares about my well-being. I glanced at Vivian, who gave me an encouraging nod. The eviction stands, Melissa. You have until tomorrow morning. You can't do this. Where are we supposed to go? You're both highly paid medical professionals. Figure it out. The words felt foreign in my mouth. Direct, unapologetic. 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 This isn't you. Mom? Melissa's voice dropped to a whisper. Someone's influencing you. Is it Vivian? I bet it's Vivian. My friend rolled her eyes so dramatically, I almost laughed, despite the tension. No one is influencing me, except you and Derek. You showed me exactly who you are, and what I mean to you. Consider it a valuable lesson, one I should have learned years ago. We'll fight this, Derek interjected. You can't just throw us out of our home. Actually, I can. Check the deed, Derek. My name is still on it because you insisted it would be easier for the mortgage application. The mortgage you haven't been paying, by the way. I could hear them whispering frantically to each other, no doubt. Realizing the precariousness of their position, Mum, Melissa tried again, her voice honeyed now. You've just had major surgery. You're on pain medication. You're not thinking clearly. Let's not make any hasty decisions. My mind hasn't been this clear in years, I replied. And if you're concerned about my medical state, that's interesting considering. Yesterday, you couldn't be bothered to help me to the bathroom. Another silence. Then, what do you want? Is this about money? Because if it is, it's not about money, Melissa. It's about respect. It's about recognizing that relationships aren't transactional. I don't want anything from you except for you to comply with the eviction notice. After everything I've done for you, her voice cracked, genuine emotion breaking through the calculation. I'm your daughter. The question hung in the air, heavy with decades of complicated history. Yes, you are my daughter and I will always love you. I took a deep breath. But love without respect isn't healthy for either of us. I've enabled behaviors that aren't serving anyone well. That stops now. So, you're just cutting us off, throwing us out. Disbelief colored her words. I'm creating boundaries, long overdue ones. I felt tears threatening but pushed them back. What happens next is up to you. This isn't over. Derek growled. You'll regret this. I've regretted many things in my life, Derek. Setting boundaries isn't going to be one of them. With that, I ended the call. Vivian reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, Anne. That couldn't have been easy. The phone immediately began ringing again. I turned it off completely. It wasn't, I admitted, feeling drained yet somehow lighter. But it was necessary. As Vivian helped me to the living room couch, I realized that for the first time in decades, I wasn't calculating what someone else needed from me. Instead, I was finally asking myself, what do I need? The answer was beginning to take shape, and it looked nothing like the life I'd been living. When James called that afternoon to report that Melissa and Derek were attempting to contest the eviction, I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me was my own reaction. Not panic or regret, but a steely resolve I hadn't felt since my early days in nursing when I'd stand up to dismissive doctors who underestimated my knowledge. They're claiming you're mentally incompetent due to your medication and recent surgery, James explained, his voice matter of fact. They've already contacted your surgeon to request your medical records. They won't get them, I replied confidently. Doctor-patient confidentiality still applies even to family members who are doctors themselves. That's correct. However, they're building a case that you're being unduly influenced and are incapable of making sound financial decisions. I laughed without humor. Interesting argument from people who haven't paid their mortgage in 3 months. Despite having 2 six-figure incomes, James chuckled. I made a similar point to their hastily acquired attorney. Anne, I don't want you to worry. Their case is weak, especially given that you've been making sophisticated financial and legal decisions throughout your career. After our call, Vivan helped me perform the physical therapy exercises I'd been neglecting at Melissa's house. The pain was excruciating, but necessary. A fitting metaphor for what I was going through emotionally. They're not gonna let this go easily. I winced as I bent my knee as instructed. Of course not, Vivian replied, gently supporting my leg. You've pulled the financial rug out from under them. People show their true colors when money's involved. I just keep thinking about all the signs I ignored over the years, I admitted. The way Melissa would tense up whenever someone at the hospital mentioned my name. How Derek would make little comments about my interference, even while accepting my help. You wanted to believe the best of them, Vivian said. That's not a character flaw, Anne. It's just that some people take kindness for weakness. Around 6 o'clock that evening, my phone, which I'd briefly turned back on, lit up with a text from an unexpected source. Caroline Jenkins, my former nursing colleague who now worked at the rehabilitation facility connected to Boston Memorial. And your daughter was just here asking questions about available rooms for you. Said, you're having cognitive issues after surgery and need supervised care. Something feels off. Call me. My hands shook as I showed Vivan the message. They're trying to have you committed, Vivian said, outrage coloring her voice, to a rehab facility where they can claim you need constant supervision. And once I'm there, they could petition for temporary guardianship, I added. The pieces falling into place, especially if they convince my doctors I'm not thinking clearly. I immediately called Caroline back, explaining the situation in detail. I knew something wasn't right, she said. Melissa was asking about facilities with memory care units, which made no sense for a knee replacement patient, and she kept emphasizing how confused you've been, Caroline. If anyone from my family tries to admit me, or claims authority to make decisions for me, say no more, she interrupted firmly. I'll alert all departments. No. One will admit you without speaking directly to you first. And I'll make sure your surgeon knows what's happening. No sooner had I ended that call than my doorbell rang. Vivan peered through the peephole and stepped back, her expression grim. It's Melissa. And she's not alone. There's a man in a uniform with her. A police officer? I asked, alarm rising in my throat. No. Looks like paramedics, and I think they're trying to force the issue. My heart pounded as Vivienne cracked the door, keeping the security chain engaged. Can I help you? She asked, her voice deceptively pleasant. I'm here to see my mother. Melissa's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. I know she's in there. Your mother doesn't wish to see visitors right now, Vivan replied calmly. This isn't a social call, Melissa snapped. We have concerns about her mental state and physical safety. We've brought medical Transport to take her to a facility where she can receive proper care. The paramedic looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Ma'am, we received a call about an elderly post-surgical patient experiencing confusion and requiring medical intervention. That elderly patient is a respected medical professional who is perfectly competent, Vivian replied. And she's not confused in the slightest. That's for doctors to determine, Melissa insisted. Vivienne, you're interfering with necessary medical care. That could be construed as elder abuse. I'd heard enough. Using my walker, I made my way to the door. Open it, Vivienne, I said. Quietly. She looked concerned, but removed the chain, allowing the door to swing open fully. Melissa's eyes widened when she saw me standing there, dressed in clean clothes, hair neatly combed, fully alert. Mom, she faltered. We've been so worried. No, you haven't, I interrupted, my voice steady, despite my racing heart. You've been worried about your finances and your reputation, not about me. I turned to the paramedic. Sir, I apologize that you were brought here under false pretenses. As you can see, I'm alert and oriented. I gestured to my surgical leg. I had a total knee replacement last week, but my mind is perfectly clear. The man looked between Melissa and me, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. She's on heavy pain medication, Melissa insisted. She's not making rational decisions. I reduced my pain medication 2 days ago, I countered. And I've made perfectly rational decisions my entire life, including the decision to stop enabling ungrateful family members. Perhaps I should contact my supervisor, the paramedic said, reaching for his radio. That won't be necessary, came a new voice from behind them. James stood in the hallway, his imposing figure a welcome sight. I'm Mrs. Simmons' attorney, and I have paperwork proving her competency was assessed just this morning by an independent psychiatrist. This was news to me. James had been busy indeed. But I didn't let my surprise show. Melissa's face flushed with anger. You had no right to freeze our accounts. That money was promised to us. And there it was. The real reason for this desperate attempt. Not concern for my well-being, but panic over their financial. I had every right, I replied calmly. And I never promised you unlimited access to my life savings. What about everything you owe me? After all, I've sacrificed. Tears welled in her eyes. But I recognized the manipulation for what it was. Sacrificed? I echoed incredulous. I paid for your education, your wedding, your house, and held it over my head, my entire life, she shouted, mask finally, dropping completely. Always the perfect nurse Simmons, making sure everyone knew how generous she was while making me feel like I could never measure up. The paramedic backed away, clearly wanting no part of this family drama. James stepped forward, placing himself between Melissa and me. I think it's time you left, he said firmly. Any further communication should go through me. As Melissa was ushered away, still protesting, I caught a glimpse of something in her eyes that I'd never fully acknowledged before. Not just anger or entitlement, but deep-seated resentment that had been festering for years. I closed the door and leaned heavily on my walker, suddenly exhausted. Are you okay? Vivian asked gently. No, I admitted, but I will be. What I didn't say was that something had broken inside me, the last, tenuous thread of the illusion that my relationship with my daughter could ever be what I'd hoped for. It was a death of sorts. And like any death, it would require mourning. But first, I needed to protect myself from the storm that was clearly just beginning. The next morning, My phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Worry after yesterday's confrontation. I almost didn't answer. Hello, Mrs. Simmons. This is Dr. Harrison, your knee surgeon. His familiar voice was concerned. I thought I should call you directly. Your daughter has been rather persistent about your postoperative care. I sighed, sinking deeper into Vivian's comfortable armchair. Let me guess. She suggested I'm experiencing unusual confusion or cognitive decline. Something along those lines, he confirmed. She's requested copies of your surgical reports and medication list, citing concerns about adverse reactions. As your surgeon, I found that odd since she was present during our presurgical consultations where we discussed all potential side effects. Dr. Harrison, I want to be completely transparent with you, I said. My daughter and I are in the middle of a significant personal conflict that has nothing to do with my surgery or recovery. She's attempting to use my medical situation to gain leverage. There was a pause then. I suspected as much. Mrs. Simmons, I've known you professionally for 15 years. The idea that you would suddenly become incapable of making sound decisions struck me as highly improbable. Relief washed over me. Thank you for calling me directly. Of course. And just to put your mind at ease, I've noted in your file that all medical information requires your explicit personal authorization. Your status as a healthcare professional affords you certain considerations. After hanging up, I turned to Vivian, who had been listening from the kitchen. She's trying every angle, isn't she? Of course she is. Vivian replied, bringing me a cup of tea. You've cut off her financial supply line. People get desperate when the gravy train stops running. Throughout the day, more calls came in, each one revealing how extensively Melissa was trying to undermine me. My primary care physician, my pharmacist, even the director of nursing at Boston Memorial, where I'd worked for decades, all reaching out to verify the concerning reports they'd received from my worried daughter. Each conversation strengthened my resolve. These were my colleagues, people who knew my character and capabilities. Their calls weren't just professional courtesy. They were acts of respect for the relationships we'd built over years. By afternoon, James arrived with news about the eviction. They've moved out, he reported, settling onto Vivian's sofa. Not willingly, of course. The sheriff had to be present, and there was quite a scene, according to my paralegal, who oversaw the process. Where will they go? Despite everything, I couldn't help but worry. James and Vivian exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. They're adults with resources. James reminded me gently. That's not your concern anymore. Old habits, I admitted. I've spent my entire life worrying about Melissa. And how has that worked out for you? Vivian asked, not unkindly. Before I could answer, my phone rang again. This time, it was Robert Chen, the bank manager I'd spoken with 2 days earlier. Mrs. Simmons, I wanted to let you know that your son-in-law came to the bank today quite agitated. He was demanding access to your accounts, claiming you'd authorized him as your financial proxy. My blood ran cold. I did no such thing. We're well aware, he assured me. Our security team escorted him from the premises after he became belligerent. However, I thought you should know he was carrying what appeared to be documents with your signature on them. Forgeries, I whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper than I thought possible. Most likely, Robert agreed. Nevertheless, I've placed additional security measures on all your accounts requiring in-person verification for any significant change. After thanking him, I sat in stunned silence. The magnitude of what was happening finally hitting me full force. They're trying to steal from me, I said, my voice barely audible. My own daughter and her husband are actively trying to take control of everything I have. James leaned forward, his expression grave. Anne, I think it's time we discuss a restraining order. That seems so extreme, I protested. Weakly. What's extreme is attempting to have your mother committed to a facility under false pretenses, Vivian countered. What's extreme is forging financial documents. Deep down, I knew they were right. This wasn't a simple family disagreement that would blow over. It was a calculated attempt to seize control of my assets and autonomy. There's something else we need to discuss, James added, pulling out a folder from his briefcase. Your will and healthcare proxy. I assume Melissa is currently named in both. I nodded. The reality of what needed to be done, settling heavily on my shoulders. We need to change that immediately, he said. Given recent events, having Melissa in a position to make financial or medical decisions for you poses a significant risk. For 40 years, I'd never considered naming anyone but my daughter as my heir and proxy. Even after Thomas died, it seemed the natural order of things, mother to daughter, generation to generation. Who would I name instead? I asked, genuinely at a loss. Vivian squeezed my hand. That's entirely your decision, Anne. But it should be someone you trust completely, someone who has your best interests at heart. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text message from Caroline. Thought you should know, several of us from the Eviction old nursing team are putting together a rotation schedule to help with your recovery once you're ready. No one messes with one of our own. Just say the word. Tears welled in my eyes as I showed the message to Vivian and James. You see, Vivian said softly, family isn't always blood. That evening, as Vivian helped me with my exercises, my phone rang again. This time it was my grandson, Tyler. Melissa's 9-year-old son, who was away at college in California. Grandma, what's going on? Mom and Dad aren't making any sense, and they're saying you've lost your mind or something. His genuine confusion touched me. Tyler had always been a sweet boy, somewhat removed from his parents' materialistic values. It's complicated, sweetheart, I began, unsure how much to share. Your parents and I are having a serious disagreement about some financial matters. Is it true you kicked them out of their house? He asked hesitantly. The house is in my name, I explained. And yes, I asked them to leave after they made it clear they weren't willing to help me recover from my surgery. There was a pause then. Is that why you paid for that summer program for me last year so you could hold it over everyone's heads later? The question stung, revealing how thoroughly Melissa had poisoned even this relationship. Tyler, I've never kept a ledger of the things I've done for people I love, I said carefully. I paid for your program because I believed in your talent and wanted to support your dreams. There were no strings attached. Mom says you're manipulating everyone with your money, he continued, clearly repeating what he'd been told. That, you've always used it to control her. I closed my eyes, gathering my thoughts. This young man deserved honesty, not bitterness. Your mother and I have very different perspectives on our history. Together, I finally said. But I want you to know that, whatever happens between us, it doesn't change how I feel about. I don't know what to believe, he admitted. Dad's saying we might have to move and Mom's been crying and everything's just messed up. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, I told him sincerely. It's not fair to. After we hung up, I sat quietly contemplating the ripple effects of my actions. Standing up for myself wasn't affecting only Melissa and Derek. It was reshaping every relationship connected to them. Collateral damage, Vivian observed, reading my expression. It's unavoidable. He's just a boy. I murmured. He's 19, she reminded me. Old. enough to form his own opinions eventually once the dust settles. As night fell, I found myself standing before the mirror in Vivian's guest bathroom, really looking at my reflection for the first time in years. The woman staring back at me seemed simultaneously familiar and foreign. The same gray-streaked hair and laugh lines, but with a new steadiness in her gaze. I thought about the allies who had emerged in just the past 48 hours. Colleagues, friends, professionals who respected me enough to question the narrative Melissa was spinning. For decades, I'd poured all my emotional energy into one relationship, neglecting the community that had quietly surrounded me all along. Enough, I whispered to my reflection. It's time to rewrite this story. The next morning, James arrived, with a notary and a stack of documents that would fundamentally reshape my future. As we spread the papers across Vivian's dining table, I felt a strange mix of grief and liberation. We'll start with the revocation of power of attorney, James explained, sliding the first document toward me. This nullifies any previous authorization Melissa had to act on your behalf. I picked up the pen, my hand hovering over the signature line. Will this be public record? Yes, James confirmed. That's partly the point, to create an official paper trail showing you've explicitly removed her authority. I signed my name with a surprisingly steady hand. Next came the healthcare proxy, the document that would determine who could make medical decisions for me if I became incapacitated. For over 20 years, Melissa's name had occupied that space. Have you decided who you'd like to name? James asked gently. I glanced at Vivian, who had been quietly supportive throughout this process. Would you be willing? Her eyes widened in surprise. Of course, Anne. I'd be honored. But are you certain? More certain than I've been about anything in years, I replied. I trust you with my life. Literally, in this case, as I signed that document, I felt a weight lifting. No longer would I have to fear that a health crisis might give Melissa control over me. The most difficult document came last. My revised will. You don't have to make final decisions today, James reminded me. This is just a preliminary revision to ensure Melissa and Derek don't remain your primary beneficiaries. I stared at the blank spaces where new names should go. I've never considered anyone else. Take your time, James advised. Many of my clients establish charitable foundations or trusts with specific purposes. Others choose to benefit institutions that were meaningful to them. As he spoke, an idea began forming, something that felt right in a way I couldn't quite articulate. Boston Memorial has a nursing scholarship program, I said slowly. For years I've watched talented nurses' aides struggle to advance their education while working full-time. James nodded, making notes. A scholarship endowment would be entirely feasible with your assets. And Tyler, I added, my grandson shouldn't suffer for his parents' actions. I'd like to establish a trust for him, something Melissa and Derek can't access, but that will support his education and perhaps help him purchase his first home someday. Very reasonable, James agreed. Anything else? I thought about my modest collection of jewelry, including my mother's pearls that I'd always assumed would go to Melissa someday. Caroline Jenkins has a daughter who just entered nursing school. I'd like to leave my mother's pearls to her. As we continued working through the details, I realized I was dismantling the future I had always imagined, one where my possessions and resources would naturally flow to my daughter and her family. In its place, I was creating something new, a legacy that reflected values rather than obligation. By the time James and the notary left, I felt emotionally drained, but oddly peaceful. The papers were signed, the decisions made. There would be no going back to the way things had been. How do you feel? Vivan asked, bringing me a cup of tea as I rested my leg. Like I've attended my own funeral, I admitted. But also like I've been reborn. She nodded thoughtfully. Endings and beginnings often happen simultaneously. That afternoon, my physical therapist, Marcus, arrived for our first home session. Vivian had arranged for him to come to her apartment rather than the medic outpatient facility where I'd originally been scheduled. Another small kindness in a growing constellation of support. As Marcus guided me through exercises that made sweat bead on my forehead, my phone rang. Melissa's number flashed on the screen. Do you want to answer it? Vivan asked. I shook my head. Not right now. The phone eventually stopped ringing, only to light up with a text message. I know what you did. Changing your will won't fix what's broken between us. Call me when you're ready to have a real conversation instead of hiding behind lawyers. My hand trembled slightly as I showed Vivian the message. How did she find out so quickly? I wondered aloud. Small communities talk. Marcus offered unexpectedly as he helped stretch my leg. I've worked with enough wealthy families to know that banks, law, offices, and medical facilities all have staff who gossip. No offense intended. None taken, I assured him. You're probably right. After Marcus left, I found myself staring at Melissa's message, trying to decode what lay beneath her words. Was there a genuine desire to repair our relationship? Or just another attempt to regain access to my resources? You don't have to decide anything right now, Vivan reminded me, seeing my distress. I know, I sighed. But eventually, I'll have to face her. On your terms, Vivian emphasized. When you're stronger, both physically and emotionally. That evening, we received an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang. Around 7 and Vivan peered through the peephole, her posture immediately stiffening. It's Derek, she whispered. My heart raced. I don't want to see him. I'll handle it, she assured me, opening the door just enough to block entry, while keeping the security chain engaged. From my position in the living room, I could hear their conversation. Clearly, I need to speak with Anne. Derek's voice was tightly controlled. She's not receiving visitors, Vivian replied firmly. This is between family, he insisted. You have no right to interfere. I have every right to decide who enters my home, Vivian countered. And Anne has made it clear she doesn't wish to speak with you. Just tell her. We're staying at the Marriott downtown. Derek's voice dropped, almost pleading now. Our credit cards are being declined. We can't access any accounts. Does she understand what she's doing to us? I believe she understands perfectly, Vivan replied coldly. Melissa's a mess, he continued. Is that what she wanted? To destroy her own daughter? Something in his words struck me as fundamentally wrong. The assumption that my actions were designed to hurt rather than to protect myself. Before Vivan could respond, I called out, It's all right. Viv. Let me answer him. Using my walker, I made my way to the door. Vivian looked concerned, but stepped aside. Derek's appearance shocked me. Just 3 days had passed since I'd left their house, but he looked disheveled, his usually immaculate appearance now rumpled and tired. Anne, he began, his tone conciliatory. This has all gotten out of hand. We need to talk. No, Derek, I interrupted quietly. What we need is space and time. What you and Melissa need is to experience the consequences of your actions and attitudes. Or so. This is punishment? His facade of politeness cracked slightly. This is reality. I corrected him. The reality that 2 adults with medical degrees and 6-figure salaries should be able to support themselves without draining their elderly mother's accounts. You've always been so generous before, he argued. How were we supposed to know? You'd suddenly change the rules? The entitlement in his question left me momentarily speechless. Then with perfect clarity, I replied, perhaps when you told me you weren't my nurses, you should have remembered that I was never your banker. I closed the door then, not waiting for his response. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from a surge of power I'd forgotten I possessed. Bravo, Vivian said softly. That night, I lay awake long after Vivian had gone to bed, replaying Derek's words in my mind. Our credit cards are being declined. How had they, two highly paid professionals, become so financially dependent on me that a few days without access to my accounts had left them unable to pay for a hotel room? The answer was uncomfortable but obvious. I had created this situation through years of unquestioning generosity. Their entitlement had grown in direct proportion to my enabling. As painful as this upheaval was, perhaps it was necessary, not just for me, but for them as well. With that thought, I finally drifted off to sleep, dreaming not of the past I was leaving behind, but of the future I was reclaiming. 2 weeks after my confrontation with Derek, I was settling into a new rhythm. My knee was healing well, thanks to Marcus, diligent therapy sessions, and my own determination. I could now move short distances with just a cane. Each step a small victory. Vivian had been an unwavering pillar of support, but I knew I couldn't stay in her guest room indefinitely. We were beginning to discuss my options when an unexpected call arrived from my grandson, Tyler. Grandma, are you okay? I've been trying to reach you. His concern warmed my heart. I'm doing much better. Sweetheart. How are you holding up? There was a pause then. I'm in Boston. Can I see you? The request caught me off guard. You're supposed to be in California for classes. I took a week off. He explained. Things at home are intense. Mom and Dad are fighting constantly. They had to move into this small apartment, and Mom keeps saying, it's all your fault. But Dad's blaming her for mismanaging their finances, and I just needed to get away from it all. My heart ached for him. At 19, he shouldn't be caught in the crossfire of adult conflicts. Of course, you can see me, I told him, but I should warn you, I'm not staying at my apartment. I'm with a friend. That's fine, he said quickly. I just want to hear your side of the story. After discussing it with Vivian, we arranged for Tyler to visit. That afternoon, I spent the intervening hours anxiously wondering what Melissa had told him, how much he knew, and whether this visit was genuine or another manipulation tactic. When the doorbell rang at 3, Vivian gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze before going to answer it. Tyler stood in the doorway, looking both older and younger. Then I remembered. He'd grown his hair out since Christmas, and there was a new weariness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Hi, Grandma, he said awkwardly, hovering at the threshold. Tyler. I opened my arms, and after a moment's hesitation, he stepped forward to embrace me. It's so good to see you. Vivian discreetly retreated to her bedroom, giving us privacy in the living room. You look good, Tyler said, studying me as he sat down. Mom said, you were having cognitive issues after your surgery. I couldn't help the small sad laugh that escaped. I assure you my mind is perfectly clear. The only thing I'm suffering from is belated clarity. What happened, Grandma? Everything was fine at Christmas, and now suddenly, Mom says you've gone crazy and are trying to punish her for something. I took a deep breath, considering how much to share with this young man who was still finding his way in the world. Tyler, has your mother ever told you where the money came from for your summer program at Berkeley last year? Or, who made the down payment on your parents' house? He shrugged. I assumed it was from their savings. Or maybe they took out loans. I paid for your program, I said gently. Just as I paid for your mother's medical school and the down payment on their house and countless other expenses over the down years. His eyes widened. Why? Because I loved you all and wanted to help. I never expected anything in return except perhaps basic kindness. Carefully, I explained what had happened after my surgery. The neglect, the cruel words, the final confrontation that led to my decision to leave and freeze the accounts. They wouldn't help you to the bathroom. Tyler looked horrified. But, Mom's a doctor. Being a doctor doesn't automatically make someone compassionate, I replied sadly. Even to family. Tyler was quiet for a long moment processing this information. They told me you went crazy and started punishing them because they couldn't wait on you hand and foot while they were working. Is that how they characterized it? That I expected to be waited on hand and foot? He nodded, looking uncomfortable. Tyler, I spent 4 decades as a nurse. I've changed more bedpans and helped more patients to the bathroom than I can count. I understand the demands of medical careers. What I couldn't understand was why my own daughter and her husband would leave me crawling on the floor in pain rather than help me to the bathroom. So, you kicked them out of their house? He asked, his tone not accusatory, but confused. The house is in my name, I explained. I paid for it, and they hadn't been making the mortgage payments despite their combined income of over $500,000 annually. Tyler's eyebrows shot up. They make that much? I nodded. Your parents have lived well beyond their means for years, relying on my support to fill the gaps. When I removed that support, the truth of their financial situation became apparent. But why not just talk to them about it? Why the lawyers and eviction notices? His question was fair, the kind that only someone young enough to still believe in simple solutions to complex problems would ask. Because when people show you who they are, you should believe them, I said softly. Your parents showed me exactly how they viewed me. Not as a mother or grandmother worthy of care, but as a convenient source of financial support they felt entitled to. And now, Tyler asked, what happens now? I reached for his hand. Now we all have choices to make. Your parents can choose to acknowledge their behavior and work to rebuild trust. Or they can continue blaming me for the consequences of their actions. And you? I squeezed his hand gently. You can form your own opinions based on what you know of me, of them, and of the situation. They want me to convince you to unfreeze the accounts, he admitted, not meeting my eyes. Mom said, if I could just talk some sense into you, everything could go back to normal. There it was, the real reason for his visit. Yet, I couldn't find it in my heart to be angry with him. He was barely an adult, thrust into a situation he didn't create. Is that why you came? I asked quietly. He hesitated, then nodded slightly. At first, yeah, but now I'm not sure. They didn't tell me about any of this. They just said you were being irrational. And what do you think now that you've heard my side? Tyler looked up, conflict evident in his young face. I think I don't know what to think. You've always been there for me. For all of us. It doesn't make sense that you'd suddenly change unless something serious happened. It wasn't sudden for me, I told him. It was the brain, culmination of years of taken foreign-to generosity. The surgery just brought everything to the surface. We talked for another hour, Tyler asking questions, and me answering as honestly as I could, without demonizing his parents. As our conversation wound down, he seemed troubled but thoughtful. Can I ask you something personal, Grandma? Of course. Are you going to write Mom out of your will completely? The directness of the kind Question startled me. Has she discussed my will with you? He nodded, looking embarrassed. She said you're trying to cut her off from her rightful inheritance because of one argument. I took a steadying breath, heard anew by Melissa's characterization. I've restructured my estate. Yes. Some of my assets will go to nursing scholarships, some to charitable causes I believe in, and some I looked directly at him. Will be held in trust for you, accessible when you're a bit older. His eyes widened for me, but Mom said, Tyler, inheritance isn't a right, it's a gift, and gifts should go to people who have shown love, respect, and appreciation, not entitlement. As he prepared to leave, Tyler hugged me tightly. I don't know what's going to happen with all this, but I'm glad I came. I needed to see for myself that you were okay. I'm more than okay, I assured him. I'm finally learning to value myself as much as I valued others. After he left, Vivian emerged from her room. How did it go? They sent him to convince me to unfreeze the accounts. I sighed. Are you surprised? No, I admitted. But I am disappointed. Using him as a pawn, I shook my head, unable to finish the thought. At least he had the courage to hear your side, Vivian pointed out. That shows character. That night, I received a text from Tyler. Told Mom and Dad I saw you. They're not happy. I'm going back to school tomorrow. Thanks for being honest with me. Love you, Grandma. It wasn't a declaration of unconditional support, but it was something perhaps more valuable, an acknowledgement that there were multiple perspectives to consider, multiple truths to weigh. As I prepared for bed, I realized that Tyler's visit had clarified something important. This journey wasn't just about setting boundaries with Melissa and Derek. It was about giving the next generation a different model of self-respect and healthy relationships. Perhaps that more than money or property would be my true legacy. 3 weeks after Tyler's visit, I moved into Golden Pines' rehabilitation center. Not because Melissa had tried to have me committed there, but because I chose it. The irony wasn't lost on me. Are you sure about this? Vivian asked as she helped me pack my few belongings. You're welcome to stay with me until you're fully recovered. I'm sure. I replied, carefully folding a sweater. You've been incredible, Viv, but I need to start rebuilding my independence. The truth was more complex than I admitted to Vivian. Yes, I needed to regain my physical strength, but I also needed emotional space, room to process the seismic shifts in my life without feeling like a burden to anyone else. Golden Pines was where I'd sent countless patients over the years, confident they would receive excellent care. Caroline had arranged for me to have a private room overlooking the Sense Gardens, and many of the staff were former colleagues who greeted me with genuine warmth rather than professional detachment. Nurse Simmons, exclaimed Maria, who had once been a new graduate under my supervision and was now the rehabilitation unit's manager. We've got you in our best room, though it feels strange to have you as a patient rather than giving us orders. Please, it's just Anne now. I reminded her with a smile, and I promise to be a model patient. My days quickly fell into a structured rhythm. Physical therapy in the mornings, occupational therapy in the afternoons, and quiet evenings, reading or talking with other residents. The work was painful but purposeful, each day bringing measurable progress in my knees' flexibility and strength. What I hadn't anticipated was how the center would become a gathering place for my newfound support system. Vivian visited daily, often bringing small treats or magazines. Caroline stopped by during her breaks, keeping me updated on hospital gossip. Even Dr. Harrison came to check my surgical site personally rather than sending a resident. You've made quite the fan impression on people over the years. Vivan observed one afternoon as she watched a procession of visitors leave my room. I've never seen someone in rehab with such a steady stream of visitors. I never realized. I admitted. When you're working, you don't think about the connections you're building. You're just doing your job. Number Vivan shook her head firmly. You were never just doing your job, Anne. You were investing in people, and now they're returning that investment. A week into my stay, Marcus, my physical therapist, brought unexpected news during our session. Your daughter's been calling the center, he mentioned casually as he helped me navigate the parallel bars, asking about your progress, your expected discharge date, whether you're receiving visitors. My steps faltered. What have you told her? Nothing without your permission, he assured me. Patient, confidentiality still applies even with family members, but she's persistent. I nodded unsurprised. Melissa doesn't give up easily when she wants something. Is there anything you'd like us to tell her if she calls again? Marcus asked. Carefully. I considered the question as I completed another length between the bars, just that I'm progressing well and will contact her when I'm ready. That evening alone in my room, I found myself staring at my silent phone. 3 messages from Melissa remained unopened along with one from Derek. Part of me wanted to delete them unread. Another part felt compelled to know what they contained. Before I could decide, a soft knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Maria peeked in, her expression apologetic. I'm so sorry to bother you, Anne, but there's someone insisting on seeing you. She says she's your daughter. My heart raced. Melissa's here. Maria nodded. At the front desk, she's claiming it's her right as next of kin to assess your care situation. I told her visiting hours are over, but she's threatening to call the hospital administration. The old me would have acquiesced immediately, avoiding conflict at all costs. But I was no longer that woman. Please tell her that I'm not accepting visitors this evening, I said firmly, and remind her that, as a medical professional, she should respect patient privacy and protocols. Maria looked relieved. I'll tell her, and I'll alert security just in case. After she left, I sat with the knowledge that for the first time in our adult relationship, I had denied Melissa access to me. It felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Minutes later, my phone rang. Melissa's number flashing on the screen. This time I answered. Hello, Melissa. They won't let me see you. Her voice was tight with controlled anger. What have you told them about me? Only that I'm not accepting visitors this evening. I replied calmly. It's been a tiring day. I'm not just any visitor. I'm your daughter, your only child. The emphasis on only was pointed, a reminder of the unique position she believed she held. Yes, you are, I acknowledged. And when I'm ready to see you, I'll let you know. Ready? She scoffed. What does that even mean? We need to talk about what you've done. The accounts, the house, the will. You can't just cut me out of your life over one bad day. It wasn't one bad day, Melissa, I said quietly. It was the culmination of years of imbalance in our relationship, and we will talk eventually, but not tonight, and not until I'm stronger. Tyler said, you've been manipulating him too, she accused, telling him you've set up some trust fund for him while cutting me out. The distortion of my conversation with Tyler stung, but didn't surprise me. I didn't manipulate anyone. I simply answered his questions honestly. You know what? Fine. Her voice hardened. Stay in that place with all your nurse friends fawning over you. Play the victim, but don't expect me to come crawling back when you realize how lonely life is without family. Is that what you think this is about? I asked. genuinely curious. That I want you to crawl back. Isn't it? Isn't this whole dramatic production designed to make us grovel for forgiveness? I sighed deeply. No, Melissa. This isn't about punishment or groveling. It's about recognizing my own worth and setting healthy boundaries, something I should have done decades ago. Boundaries, she repeated, mockingly. Is that what your therapist is calling it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like plain old revenge. I'm sorry you see it that way, I said, refusing to be baited into a once-steady anger. When you're ready to have a real conversation, one that acknowledges how your actions affected me, I'll be here. Until then, I need space to heal, both physically and emotionally. Whatever. Mom, call me when you're done with your little empowerment journey. The line went dead. I placed my phone on the raften nightstand, hands shaking, but mind clear. Despite her dismissive words, I'd heard something beneath Melissa's anger, fear. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, she was facing a mother who wouldn't capitulate to emotional manipulation. Maria checked on me shortly after, concern evident in her expression. Everything okay? The receptionist said, your daughter left in quite a state. Everything's fine. I assured her, surprised to find that I meant it. Actually better than fine. I think I just passed an important test. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in weeks, unburdened by the anticipation of an inevitable confrontation. It would come eventually, but on my terms when I was ready. The next morning, Marcus noted my improved mobility during therapy. Something's different today, he observed as I completed my exercises with new determination. You're moving with more confidence. I smiled, thinking of the emotional weight I'd set down the night before. Let's just say I've finally stopped carrying unnecessary baggage. He laughed, not fully understanding the double meaning, but appreciating my renewed spirit. Whatever it is, keep it up. At this rate, you'll be ready for discharge ahead of schedule. As I worked through my exercises, I realized that this rehabilitation was about far more than my knee. I was rebuilding myself from the inside out, stronger, more balanced, and finally aligned with my own truth. 6 weeks after my surgery, I was discharged from Golden Pines with a certificate of completion that the staff had playfully decorated with gold stars. My knee, while still stiff in the mornings, was functioning better than it had in years. I could walk unassisted, climb stairs cautiously, and even stand long enough to cook simple meals. It was time to go home. Not to Melissa's house or Vivian's guest room, but to my own apartment that had stood empty these past weeks. Are you sure you don't want to stay with me a bit longer? Vivian asked, as she helped me pack my belongings. Your place has been closed up for a while. James had a cleaning service go through it last week. I assured her. And I need to start living my own life again. What I didn't say was that I was finally ready for the confrontation I'd been postponing. By returning to my own space, I was reclaiming not just my physical independence, but my emotional autonomy as well. As Vivian drove me home, I felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. My apartment building, an elegant pre-war structure in Back Bay, had always represented security to me. Now I wondered if it would feel different, knowing how much else in my life had changed. When we pulled up to the curb, I was surprised to see Tyler sitting on the steps, a duffel bag at his feet. Grandma, he stood as I carefully exited the car. Surprise, Tyler. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in California for finals? He embraced me gently, mindful of my still healing knee. Finals were last week. I'm on summer break now. I thought maybe if it's okay, I could stay with you for a few days. I studied his face, noting the shadows under his eyes. Of course you can stay. But does your mother know you're here? His expression tightened. Yeah, she knows. That's kind of why I'm here, actually. Once inside my apartment, which smelled freshly cleaned, but still unmistakably like home, Tyler helped Vivienne bring in my belongings while I settled onto my familiar sofa with a sigh of relief. It's good to be home, I murmured, running my hand over the familiar fabric. After Vivienne left with promises to check in tomorrow, Tyler sat across from me, his posture tense. What's going on, sweetheart? I asked directly. You didn't fly across the country just to welcome me home. He took a deep breath. Mom and Dad are getting divorced. The news stunned me. Despite their many flaws, Melissa and Derek had always seemed like a united front, particularly when it came to financial matters. I'm so sorry, I said sincerely. When did this happen? Dad moved out about 3 weeks ago. They've been fighting constantly since everything with you happened. Tyler looked down at his hands. Dad says, Mom's spending habits destroyed their credit and put them in debt. Mom says Dad never would have married her if he hadn't thought he was getting your money eventually. The ugliness of their accusations toward each other pained me, especially knowing that Tyler was caught in the crossfire. And how are you handling all this? I asked gently. Not great, he admitted. That's partly why I came here. I needed to get away from both of them for a while. I understand, I assured him, reaching for his hand. You're always welcome here. There's something else, he added hesitantly. Mom knows I'm here, and she wants to come talk to you. She says it's time to clear the air. I tensed involuntarily. Did she put you up to this? Ask you to soften me up first. Tyler looked genuinely offended. I mean, she knows I was coming to see you, but this was my idea. I'm tired of being stuck in the middle. I thought maybe if you two could actually talk. His hope was so earnest, so youthful in its optimism, that I couldn't bring myself to dismiss it outright. When does she want to come? I asked, mentally preparing myself. Tomorrow afternoon. She has the day off, I nodded slowly. All right, tell her she can come. At 2 o'clock. But Tyler, I fixed him with a serious look. I need you to understand that this conversation may not go the way you're hoping. Some rifts can't be bridged in a single meeting. I know, he said quietly. I just want you both to try. That evening, after settling Tyler in the guest room, I called James to inform him of the impending meeting. Are you sure you're ready for this? He asked, concern evident in his voice. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied. It has to happen eventually. Would you like me to be present, or perhaps Vivian? I considered his offer, tempted by the security of having an ally present. But ultimately, I shook my head, though he couldn't see the gesture. No, I decided this needs to be between Melissa and me. Having others there would only complicate things. Call me immediately after, he instructed. And remember, you don't have to agree to anything on the spot. You can always say you need time to consider. The next morning I woke early. A lifetime of hospital shifts having permanently altered my internal clock. I found Tyler already in the kitchen attempting to make breakfast. I thought you might like some protein after all that hospital food, he explained, somewhat sheepishly presenting a plate of slightly overcooked eggs. It looks wonderful, I assured him, touched by the gesture. As we ate, I studied my grandson, his father's height and build, but with hints of Melissa's features around the eyes and mouth. He was the best of both of them, untainted by the materialism and resentment that had poisoned their relationship with me. Tyler, I began carefully, About today's meeting with your mother. He looked up expectantly. I want you to make yourself scarce while she's here. Go to a movie, visit the public garden, anything. This conversation needs to happen without an audience. He frowned slightly. But what if? No what ifs, I said firmly. This isn't your burden to carry, sweetheart. It's between your mother and me. Though clearly disappointed, he nodded in agreement. At precisely 2:00, my doorbell rang. Tyler had left an hour earlier, promising to return around dinner time. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door. Melissa stood in the hallway, looking both familiar and foreign. She'd lost weight, her tailored suit hanging slightly loose on her frame, and there was a new hardness around her mouth. Mom, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Melissa, I replied, stepping back to allow her entry. Please come in. She entered cautiously, her eyes scanning the apartment as though looking for changes. I led her to the living room where I'd arranged 2 chairs facing each other, close enough for conversation, but with enough distance to maintain my personal space. Would you like some tea? I offered, falling back on the social niceties that had structured our interactions for years. No, she said shortly. I think we've had enough pretense, don't you? I settled into my chair, meeting her gaze directly. Why are you here, Melissa? Tyler thinks we need to talk, she said, her tone suggesting she found the idea dubious at best. And what do you think? She sighed, some of her defensive posture deflating. I think our relationship is beyond repair, but I also think we need closure. Closure? I repeated. That sounds very final. Isn't that what you wanted? She challenged. When you froze the accounts, evicted us from our home, and rewrote your will. What I wanted, I replied evenly, was respect, consideration, basic human kindness from my daughter during a vulnerable time. She flinched slightly but recovered quickly. One bad day, Mom. We had one bad day after years of taking care of you, and you punished us like we were criminals taking care of me. I echoed incredulously. Melissa, I've been financially supporting you and Derek for years. I paid for your education, your wedding, your house, and never let us forget it, she interrupted, color rising in her cheeks. Every gift came with invisible strings. Every generous gesture was another way to remind me that I couldn't succeed on my own. Her accusation struck me like a physical blow. Is that really how you perceived my help? As some sort of power play? What else was I supposed to think? Demanded the great nurse Simmons, beloved by all, swooping in to rescue her struggling daughter at every turn. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up in your shadow? Hearing about how respected and admired you were while I was just an afterthought? I stared at her, genuinely bewildered. An afterthought, Melissa? Everything I did was for you. Every extra shift, every promotion I worked for, it was all to give you opportunities I never had. Opportunities to become you, she countered bitterly. He nodded, looking older than 19, shadows of wisdom etched across his young face. Mom texted me, Tyler said quietly. She wrote, some rifts can't be repaired. Is that true? His question settled heavy between us. I wanted to answer honestly, but not crush the flicker of hope still burning in him. Some rifts can't be repaired in the ways we wish, I admitted slowly. But that doesn't mean healing is impossible. It might just look different. Different how? His voice trembled, searching. Well, I gathered my thoughts. Instead of recreating what was lost, sometimes we build something new, with clearer boundaries, with more honesty. Tyler fell silent, absorbing every word. At last he murmured, she's hurting, you know. Even before everything with you, she was always trying to prove something. To herself, to Dad, to everyone at the hospital. His insight startled me. I studied his face, the boy I'd once rocked to sleep, now a man uncovering truths I had missed. When did you become so perceptive? He shrugged, a small, shy smile cutting through the heaviness. I watch people, always have. Maybe that's why I chose psychology instead of medicine like Mom wanted. That night, we ordered pizza, a rare indulgence in my health-conscious home. Over greasy slices and clinking soda cans, the air lightened. We spoke of his classes, his friends in California, his summer plans. And then, almost timidly, Tyler asked, "Do you think I could stay here for the summer?" Not the whole time. I've got a research position in August. But June and July, warmth spread through me, softening my chest. Of course you can, but what about your parents? Warmth spread through me. Of course you can. He hesitated. Dad's moving to Chicago for a new job. And Mom? She's not in a great place. The apartment is tiny. She's working nonstop. We just make each other miserable. I reached across the table, taking his hand in mine. You are always welcome here, Tyler, for as long as you need. And so, over the weeks that followed, a new rhythm bloomed. He slept late, as young men do, while I completed my morning knee exercises. We shared meals, laughed over old films I had loved at his age, and carved out a routine that felt at once new and deeply familiar. One morning, after my daily walk, now stretched into a full mile, I returned to find Vivian waiting on the steps of my building, her grin mischievous. Surprise inspection. I want to see how you're really doing, not just the sanitized version you tell me on the phone. Over coffee in my kitchen, her sharp eyes softened. You look good, Anne. There's color in your cheeks again. I feel good, I confessed. Better than I have in years. Her gaze narrowed. And Melissa? I sighed, stirring my coffee in slow circles. We're at an impasse. She believes I betrayed her. I believe she betrayed me. Neither of us is willing to see the other's side. Vivian tilted her head. Give it time. 6 months ago, you wouldn't have even admitted there was another side. Her words struck deep. She was right. For decades, I'd lived under the belief that my generosity was self-evident, that my sacrifices spoke for themselves. I had never considered how they might look through Melissa's eyes, shadowed by insecurity and burdened with her own battles. I've been thinking about going back to work, I said, changing the subject, though my heart quickened. Not full-time nursing. Maybe patient advocacy. They're always looking for people to guide patients through the maze. Vivian arched a brow. Are you sure? Melissa works there. It's a big hospital, I countered. And I can't organize my entire life around avoiding my daughter. The truth was simpler. I missed purpose. Recovery had forced me still long enough to realize how much of my identity was woven into service, not blind sacrifice, but meaningful contribution. Well, Vivian said thoughtfully, if anyone can walk that minefield, it's you. Just promise me be careful. 3 days later, I submitted the application. A week after, the phone rang, interview scheduled. The morning of, I stood before my closet, paralyzed. My old uniforms felt too stiff, too clinical. My casual clothes too soft, too small for the moment. At last, I chose a teal blouse. Tyler once said it brought out my eyes, paired with black slacks and modest heels. As I stepped out of my room, Tyler emerged, hair tousled with sleep. Big day, he yawned. The interview? And their day, Hayes? I nodded, nerves fluttering in my chest. Is it ridiculous for a 68-year-old to be anxious about a job interview? Not at all. He hugged me quickly, warmly. It means you care. Just be yourself, Grandma. That's enough. Enough. 2 hours later, the director shook my hand, her smile bright with recognition. Nurse Simmons. I can't tell you how thrilled we are to have your application. Your reputation for patient advocacy precedes you. When I walked out, the offer already in my hand, I felt lighter than I had in years. And that's when I saw her. Melissa. White coat draped across her shoulders. Stethoscope hanging loose. Speaking with a colleague near the main entrance. She hadn't noticed me. For a heartbeat, I considered slipping behind a pillar, vanishing like a ghost. But instead, I straightened my spine and stepped forward. She looked up. Our eyes met. Surprise. Weariness. Something unspoken flickered across her face. Mom? She excused herself and approached cautiously. What are you doing here? I had an interview, I said simply. Patient advocacy. I start next week. She blinked, clearly stunned. You're coming back? To work here? 3 days a week? I confirmed. It's a big hospital, Melissa. We don't have to cross paths. Her fingers played with her stethoscope, an old nervous tick from medical school. Tyler mentioned you were considering it. I didn't think. She trailed off. I didn't think they'd hire you. Neither did I. Silence. Then she sighed. Well, congratulations. How are you? I asked. The question simple but weighted. Managing. She hesitated. The divorce will be final next month. Derek's already in Chicago. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Her eyes narrowed. Are you? I'd think you'd be glad to see us fall apart. No, I said firmly, shaking my head. I never wanted that. All I ever wanted was for you to be happy. She searched my face, as if testing my sincerity. Slowly, her shoulders softened. Tyler seems happy with you. He's remarkable, I said. You should be proud. I am. She whispered. He's the one thing we did right. Another silence fell, this one gentler, not jagged with resentment. I should go. Surgery in 20 minutes. She took a step back, then paused. Maybe we could have coffee sometime. To figure out how we handle working in the same place. It wasn't an olive branch, not yet. More like a fragile acknowledgement of reality. But it was something. I'd like that, I replied. As she turned away, I called softly, Melissa. She glanced over her shoulder. I meant what I said. I want you to be happy. Her eyes shimmered. I know, Mom. In your way, you always did. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was honesty. And after decades of silence masquerading as politeness, honesty was a foundation. Fragile, but real. That evening, Tyler and I celebrated my new job with Thai takeout, chopsticks clattering, laughter spilling across my apartment. He watched me closely, his eyes shining. You seem different, lighter. I feel different, I admitted. For the first time, I'm making choices based on what I want, not on what anyone else expects. And how does that feel? I thought for a moment, then smiled. Like rebirth. Like I'm finally becoming who I was meant to be. At 68, he teased gently. Why not? I laughed softly. Some flowers bloom late, but they bloom just as beautifully. The evening sun poured golden light through the windows, bathing everything in warmth. I looked at my grandson across the table, at the quiet joy of a life I was finally shaping for myself, and realized something profound. This was not an ending. It was a beginning. The daughter I once clung to might never return in the way I dreamed. But in her place, honesty had taken root. In my life, respect had finally replaced sacrifice. And in my heart, peace had bloomed where pain once lived. For the first time in decades, I whispered to myself, this is enough.